Good evening, class. For this week's discussion board, I decided to answer question number 2. The question asks, how did the United States become involved in Afghanistan? Was war necessary or a matter of choice? Explain. For the first part, prior to 9/11, the United States had little interest in Afghanistan. However, the United States became directly involved in Afghanistan because of the attacks on September 11th. American forces were to specifically pursue, attempt to capture, and kill the leaders of Al Qaeda and those responsible for the attacks on September 11th. The reasons the United States military and forces went after members of Al Qaeda was because they designed and executed the terrorist attacks, and Afghanistan is known as the headquarters and a sanctuary for Al Qaeda. Afghanistan is considered a sanctuary for Al Qaeda because of the relationship between the Taliban, which is a regime attempting to control the government. It is important to understand the relationship between Al Qaeda and the Taliban. The relationship between the two groups dates back to the Afghan resistance to Soviet occupation in the 1980s. The Taliban gained control after the Soviets left Afghanistan and welcomed Osama bin Laden to Afghanistan after he was evicted from Sudan in 1996. After 9/11, the Taliban regime was supposed to relinquish the leaders of Al Qaeda to the United States. However, because of their previous relationships with Al Qaeda, the Taliban refused to do so, which resulted in the U.S. also going into Afghanistan. The United States' main focus was on either killing or capturing those responsible for the nearly 3,000 lives lost on 9/11. This became the United States began to retaliate against those responsible, and this was the main focus and the main reason the United States went to war in Afghanistan, because the United States technically did not go to war with Afghanistan. It went to war against groups within the country. So the second part was the war necessary or a matter of choice? According to Snow, war was necessary because of the potential of the continuing threats of Al Qaeda. Therefore, eradicating Al Qaeda is necessary. However, after the United States became involved in Afghanistan, the threat of the civil war that was going on in Afghanistan, which was between those against the Taliban regime and the Taliban, became a problem for the United States, and the United States also found itself fighting the Taliban regime as well as Al Qaeda. So, in Snow's opinion, it can be impossible for the United States to save the Afghan government from the Taliban. This can lead to a war of choice because we do not want the Taliban to control the government, and we are choosing to intervene so this does not take place. Therefore, to wrap up Snow's argument, Snow is saying that war was necessary to stop the threat of Al Qaeda and to prevent them from more terrorist attacks. However, war is a matter of choice by fighting the Taliban to prevent the Taliban from gaining control of the government, because we do not want a government like the Taliban, who previously had a relationship or may still have a relationship with Al Qaeda. We do not want them to gain control of the government after we have already gone in there and had elections to elect new leaders. So therefore, this war of choice is seen as wanting to prevent the Taliban from gaining control. And we are choosing to go to war in that aspect to prevent them from gaining control. So in my opinion, I do not agree with Snow's second argument of choosing to go to war entails having to intervene with which group or who controls the government in Afghanistan. I believe this because of past relationships Al Qaeda and the Taliban had. Since the two have had relationships, then the war is not only necessary to capture and kill members of Al Qaeda, but it is also necessary to ensure the Taliban does not gain control of the government. Um, so, like I said, Snow believed that it is a matter of choice going to war against the Taliban to prevent them from gaining control of the government. But I believe it is necessary to go to war against the Taliban because of the previous relationship the Taliban had with Al Qaeda. So, and all in all, war was necessary on both, in my opinion, war was necessary on both sides of the spectrum. So, thanks for visiting my post this week, and I look forward to your responses.